Here we go. We are on the last factoring section, and I'm sure you're very excited about that. And section 5.9 has problems where there's a number in front of the x squared term, and we haven't had that before. There's a number here. Normally that's been just x squared plus some number, x plus some number. When the number is in front of the x squared term, it throws the balance and symmetry off, and it makes the crisscross method not work very well. So I thought about it, and I've decided that I'm going to teach you trial and error for this type of problem, because honestly it's just easier than trying to use crisscross. Crisscross works really well if there's no number here. Now, when you learn trial and error, you can use it for any type of, any polynomial with 3 terms you can factor with trial and error. So if you understand this method for this kind of problem, you can also use it for problems where there isn't a leading number in the front to say. But anyway, we're going to do trial and error for this last section. So going by example, I'm going to start with 2x squared plus 7x plus 5. And the number I'm talking about, the problem number, is this guy right there. He hasn't been there before. So what you're going to do, and I'm not going to go into why crisscross breaks down here, but you're going to pretty much do the same initial thing. We need to look at what two things will multiply to make a 2x squared. Well, there's only one way to get 2 times 1. So it would be, instead of an x and an x, it's going to be a 2x and an x. Now, if you want to think of this as 1x, I don't put a 1 here, but it's there. All right, so our first term is taken care of. What you need to do back here the last numbers must multiply to 5. And that makes sense because when you FOIL, when you multiply these two, that's how you get this number. So we need 2 numbers that multiply to 5. Now let me find a pencil. The problem is, it matters whether you say 1 times 5 or whether you say 5 times 1. Let me, for example, put a 1 and a 5 here. So you just put 2 numbers there. Don't think too hard about it initially. Just put 2 numbers that can multiply to 5. Now what you're going to do is look at the inner and the outer. Remember, the inner and the outer, when you FOIL, are going to add together. And the inner and the outer are going to make this middle number. So without putting any signs just complicate things, even though everything's plus. Figure out what the inner plus outer is going to be, and then look to see if it multiplies to the middle term. So I have basically 1x times 10x. Can you get to a 7 from a 1? You can even ignore the x's. From a 1 and a 10, is there any possible way to get to a 7, whether you add or subtract? And the answer is no. 1 and 10 can never make a 7 by addition or subtraction. That means we have to go with the other way. So I'm going to put a 5 and a 1 instead. I just reversed the order. Now, don't put signs initially, just look. 5 and 2. Can 5 and 2 somehow combine to make 7? Yes. Now that I know my numbers are in the right place, I'm gonna cement them in here with pen. Then you can figure out the signs that make what you need. I have to multiply to a positive 5, and I have to add to a positive 7. So 5 plus 2, that means this will make a positive 2. This will make the positive 5. So I need a positive and a positive. That's my answer. All trial and error is thinking of FOIL in reverse. That's all. So if you understand FOIL, this method, you should be able to make sense of it. example 2, let's go with 7x squared plus 17x plus 6. All right, so your first step is to write the open parentheses. And then we need the two things that multiply to make a 7x squared. Well, I can only make a 7 with a 1 times 7, so I'm going to put 7x times x. I don't put a 1 here. That makes 7x squared. Now, what goes here? Remember, the last numbers must multiply to the n number. So, how can I get a 6? How many different ways can I make a 6? Well, I can make a 6 by a 6 and a 1. 6 times 1. Don't forget about the 6 times 1 or the times 1 option. And let's look at it. 6 and 7, can that make a 17 in any way? So 6 and 7 is 13. No. So I'm going to try the other way around. So here's what I do. Instead of erasing, let me just do it like this. 6 and 1, no, right? The whole point of trial and error, we tried and we erred. Now we're going to try again. But we haven't exhausted the 6 and the 1 option yet. So I'm going to put the 7x and the x. I know that for sure. I'm going to switch the order and put a 1 and a 6 because that still multiplies to 6. Now look at it. 1 times 42, there's no way 1 and 42 can add or subtract or add in any way with positives or negatives to make a 17. I erred again. Okay, let's now 7x times x. What other two numbers can multiply to 6? Let's do a 2 and a 3. First thing that comes to mind. Well, 2x, 21x. 2 and 21. Just look at those numbers, 2 and 21. If one of them's negative, that'll give me 19. If they're both negative, that's a big number. I can't make a 17 with a 2 and a 21, no matter what I do to the signs. Goodbye. And now you see why this is loved so much and why it's trial and error. Crisscross, you'd have to do this too, and then you'd also have to remember another thing at the end. So this is actually less complicated than crisscross, believe it or not. I'm just going to switch the order here and put the 3 and the 2. So I've got 3, 2 times 7. Remember, you're going to multiply these. 3 and 14. 3 and 14, yes, that can make 17. Okay, we're good to go. Now let's think of signs. Everything's positive, so that's all I got to do. Now let's try one more, and then I'm gonna stop this video and before it's gonna stop automatically on me. Let's see, number 3. Notice I'm only having positive signs between these terms to start with. Okay, let's try this. So step 1, make your parentheses. To make a 5x squared, it's going to be a 5x times x. Okay, now these last two spots have to multiply to make 8. So when you get good at this, you can kind of see in advance what numbers to put here by just thinking about what multiplies to this 5. I'm going to put a 2 and a 4 because I know that makes 8. Well, 2 and 20, 2x and 20x, cannot combine to make a 14. Goodbye. So let's switch them. 4 and 2. 4 and 10, yes, 4 and 10 can make the 14. And everything's additions, so. Now remember, always mentally check by foiling, and I didn't do it in the last two for time, but this gives me, here, I'll show you. The foil's especially important as a check here. 5x squared, 4x plus 10x is 14x plus 8. All right.